Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 31st meeting of the Capital Improvement Committee. We'll call the meeting to order here at 7:01. We start with introductions. Brian, go around the room.
I'm Brian Rose. I'm the Planning and Zoning Administrator.
Gayla Breck, member at large.
Tim Redmond from the Planning Board, and I'm the chairman.
Earl Carroll, member at large and vice chairman.
Mark Lemay, Selectman's representative.
Alan Yaton, community at large. Lowell Von Ruden, member at large.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight.
Hank Boyle is here somewhere. I don't know if
But he's not here as a representative.
he's, okay.
All right, the first order of business is the minutes from our last meeting, on May the 17th. Does anyone have any corrections or changes to the minutes?
Spelling of my name, one L in Carroll.
Duly noted.
Got it.
Any other members have any changes or corrections to the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion by Lowell Von Ruden to approve the minutes as presented, seconded by Earl Carroll. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Chair votes yes. Okay. Brian, do we have any administrative items to cover before we have our first presentation?
I'll just explain what you have on your table there. Most of you probably already know, but we handed out the minutes and the school packet, and then replacement packet of the library items. I had needed them to clarify some things so that I can update the matrix. So I haven't updated the matrix with any of the items that you have been given out tonight, but those aren't on tonight's agenda for discussion, so shouldn't be too imperative for tonight anyway.
Did you say library had been revived?
Right, library's been revised, so if you need a
Speak over
replacement, I can steal one from the pile here. And then those things should be updated by probably next matrix, and we'll get that in the matrix for you. So other than that, I don't have any other administrative items.
Thank you, Brian. All right, we have no other business to attend to. We will begin with the first item on tonight's agenda, which is the Public Works Department.
Tim, can I suggest we do sewer first? That'll get Jim out of here fairly quickly.
I will defer to Carl Quorum if it's okay with him, because he was first on the agenda as prepared prior to the meeting. Okay, so then we will switch our agenda, and we'll start with the Sewer Commission, and we'll invite Jim Bouchard up to the table, please. Please identify yourself for the record, Jim.
Yeah, my name is Jim Bouchard. I'm a sewer commissioner on the Goffstown Sewer Commission, and have been for over 15 years. We have two items that are before you. I should actually correct my English. One is the Elm Street Pump Station force main replacement. We're in the process of evaluating that. That is relatively old, and we're looking at getting that upgraded. We've had some issues with that in the past, and this is coming to light fairly recently. So what you have before you is we had in year 2012 to be determined, generally, coming out of our general fund, or general fund operating fund, approximately $75,000. That is, like I said, that's being assessed. It is getting relatively old, and we're going to have to maintain that infrastructure, we think, fairly soon. So that came up before us and before you as of late.
Jim, can you tell us how old relatively old is?
The Elm Street Pump Station is one of the oldest pumps, is basically the second oldest next to Union Street, and it's over 25 years old. It's roughly around, to be honest with you, I'm not actually exactly, I think it's circa 1992, if not earlier than that. So it's over, you know, you're approaching well over 25 years in existence with relatively low maintenance into that system as it is. But as anything goes, it's getting old, and it's looking like that the force main is going to have some work done on it. The other big item, the other item, which is fairly big, is, as you all are aware, Goffstown no longer has a wastewater treatment plant. We rely on the City of Manchester, and the City of Manchester's plant is 30 years old and is in need of some upgrades. And as we have discussed before, with the various town boards and with you folks in the past, they're upgrading the wastewater treatment plant, and that is probably going to be the final upgrade for and expansion of that for the next 20 years. As a participating member of that regional facility, there are there's three satellite communities. One is us, one is Bedford, and one is Londonderry. We all share in the cost of that. Currently, our share is being projected at $4.2 million based on the intermunicipal agreement that we have with the town of the City of Manchester. That intermunicipal agreement is still in draft form, but it's coming to final draft, and hopefully will be ratified by all towns and the City of Manchester sometime this year. But the $4.2 million is a downward figure from the 4.8 we had before, and we're actually still negotiating with them on the share in our fees. So we would like to try to reduce that a little bit more, but right now we're showing $4.2 million. This was supposed to have been ratified as of December of last year, and things being what it is, and the necessary reviews and coordination between three towns and the City of Manchester, it obviously did not occur, and it's still in that mode. So the towns have apprised Manchester that we operate on a different schedule than they do, and a different set of books. That when this becomes ratified, that we won't be able to start our contributions till the year 2013. So the capital improvements program sheet you have before you should probably be represented to show that instead of year 2012, that would be, the first year would be 2013. Now, we've been looking at how do we finance it. That's going to be a couple of different ways. We've been looking at right now, currently, it seems like the municipal bond bank is one of the places, the cheapest place to go get a loan, or go right there, or even go through, to go there, or the DOT, I'm so used to that. The Department of Environmental Services has an SRF fund, and it's basically a revolving loan fund, and their fees are really low too. So that's one option we're looking at over the next, of course, few months to see how we finance $220,000 a year, and then pay this back through user fees. Currently, at this rate, as we see right now, the rate structure we have would allow us to pay that, that back as we go forward. So those are the two items we have before you. It's relatively small. We're not, Mass Road project, as as everybody in town's aware of, is essentially done now for us. We're working with the DPW on the paving, and then that will be finally closed out. So we don't anticipate any other large capital improvement programs in the very near future.
Jim, before you close, could you please explain to the audience that you are an enterprise fund and not a taxpayer funded?
Sure, I'd be glad to. The Sewer Commission is established under an RSA that it provides for commissions for, basically it's a quasi-public utility. We are established as an enterprise fund being loosely defined as very needing to operate very similar to the Board of Selectmen, town government. What we are restricted from, though, is being able to put out warrant articles and raise and appropriate money for our own benefit. We must go through the town. We must go before the Board of Selectmen once we get through the various channels, CIP and everybody else, with a warrant article for our improvements. This is what we have done in the past when we first built the interceptors to tie into Manchester, when we've done some regional, so I said neighborhood expansions into areas where we've had to expand the sewers. We've done these through warrant articles Basically utilizing a 20-year or 30-year payback period, and we pay back the town with our user fees. We don't, the town doesn't incur or doesn't tax the taxpayers on it. It's basically, we're a user-funded utility. Our rates cover our outstanding debt load and also provide for capital reserve for future expansion and our operation charges to Manchester. So,
Well, thank you, Jim. I think that was important for everybody to know about.
Tim, if I may?
Please.
Jim, couple of things. On the matrix, when I'm dealing with the Elm Street Pump Station Force Main, we've got a $100,000 entry for 2017. For those of you on the committee, I'm looking at line 219 on the matrix.
Yeah, I need to update that.
I guess, do you want us to take that out and put in 75,000 as a placeholder in 2013?
yes, I would recommend that you do that, please.
So the total project cost up at the top would be the same amount that we would put in where the TBD to be
Yes.
determined?
Yes.
We don't, as a committee, a number of years back, we decided we didn't want to deal with TBDs.
Right.
Understandable. So I would request that you revise that, and we can provide you, if necessary, 75,000 instead of TBD.
Okay.
And that's for 13 or 12?
That would not be for this year, be 13.
Okay, so on your submission form, then, we would add the 75,000 in the year 2013.
Exactly.
I think that was it.
I do have a question for you, Jim.
Yes.
We talked last year about the capacity and upgrades to Manchester, and I wasn't certain that you said you weren't going to be needing it because of you weren't gonna buy extra capacity, because you had solved some of your inflow problems, and we had lowered our total amount, we were gonna be able to stay within our range. Is that a correct statement?
That is a correct statement, and then I would have to add furthermore, there's been a shift in policy at Manchester.
Okay.
In the past, under our previous IMA agreement, Manchester looked at your peaking load, how much, our peak, how much flow we put into them, how much total suspended solids, or otherwise known as TSS, and our biological oxygen demand, BOD. Everything had been based on a peaking load. There have been periods that Goffstown, well, let me back up. Goffstown is one of the communities where we deal with a lot of clean water inflow to our system through storm drains, private storm drains, with being roof leaders, yard drains. A lot of our infiltration we've done some remedial action through slip lining of pipes and stuff. So we've cut down on we've improved our system in terms of infiltration. The inflow coming in from off-site sources, which is very hard to control. We've done numerous education campaigns for that, but that contributes a lot to our flow during heavy rainy periods. And in the past, our daily flow is right around 1 million gallons a day. Under the old IMA agreement, we had 2.4 million gallons a day. Numerous times during severe rainy periods, our flow to Manchester could go as 4.5 million gallons a day, and sometimes even higher than that based on the rainy day period. That's when, Manchester was looking at us and saying, well, based on the way we're, under our traditional IMA, right, as it was in place, you're gonna need more capacity, Goffstown, because you keep exceeding your peaks. What happened in the course of last year, in the summer of last year, Manchester, working under review, with their consultant, under review of the EPA, took a policy to say, we're not gonna look at your peaking, we're gonna look at your median, every town's median flow. When they started looking at median flow only, we all understand peaking, Manchester deals with it with their combined sewer overflows, where they still have a lot of storm drainage connected. Everybody's gonna be subject to peaking flow for one reason or another, for rainy weather or something, or some other event. So we're gonna look at the median flow. When they did that, our capacity needs diminished because we had enough residual capacity within our current IMA agreement. Actually, we had way too much now. For the next 20 years, we have double flow. We have over almost 3 times the amount of capacity for suspended solids. We almost have two times capacity for BOD. So we've got an overabundance of capacity that we have to pay for. Whether we use it or not, we still get a billing on it. So this is what I allude to on the $4.2 million of our share. We're looking we're negotiating with them to bring some of that capacity down, reduce our 2.4 down to 1.8 million gallons per day, reduce some of our TSS and our BOD a little bit, which still leaves us more than enough to double in the next 20 years and still be within permits.
Did we sell some of our capacity to another
A
community?
long time ago, I say a long time ago, I think it was about 10, 12 years ago, at least, I think it was, we sold 400,000 gallons to one of the other satellite communities who needed an additional flow, Bedford.
Now, would that be a possibility for you if we, rather than, is there a possibility you could sell some of this extra capacity to another community?
At this time, no, we can't, because we're all negotiating a new IMA agreement. So what we ended up doing is Manchester requested, since they were doing a facilities study, all the 3 satellite communities did a facility study. They took them all, they're blending it. What they're trying to do is they have other communities that had expressed interest on getting into Manchester's system if there's some capacity left. So that's why all the communities have been looking at that really critically. What do we have? What do we really need? Considering what we had and where we started with Manchester, and in some 24 years of operation, now under the new view of being based on median loading, we're not even at 50% of what we originally had. It just, since we are, just in fairness to the ratepayers and everything, why should we be paying for a lot of extra capacity that we don't see this need increasing twofold in the next 20 years. The facility study worked with the planning department. We looked at what's going on, what's happening regionally, what's happening, for Goffstown in terms of growth. The biggest thing that we looked at, that came out of it is there are the downtown areas which we've been addressing with the Mass Road projects for capacity, because those pipes are undersized, but we don't see the need. We don't even project that we'll be at 2.4 million gallons in the next 20 years.
Even with some of these projected projects like at the county farm and stuff like that?
Exactly.
That's all on your radar?
That's been, yes, Tim, that got all factored into the facility study based on what's going on. We looked at what has been the average growth for residential development. We're not doing a lot in the residential development area anyway. I mean, that's, it's mostly, we're like most of all the other satellite communities. We really don't anticipate going out into, the less dense areas, like the agricultural zoned areas and things like this for expansion. There's really no need.
And then the last thing is a portion of the $4.2 million. It's not just capacity, it's also for normal sewer plant upgrades to meet current EPA regulations
That
and
is
stuff
correct.
like that?
That is correct. The upgrades that they're facing right now is they're looking at, the EPA is tightened up the criteria for the National Pollution Discharge Elimination, what we call NIPDES. That's been tightened up, so Manchester has to tighten up their processing for the waste stream. EPA is also in the process of still evaluating whether they want to remove aluminum for the waste stream and a few others. So if aluminum comes down as to be removed, Manchester would have to then further expand. And that's not in this program. They're fighting it very hard. But
Okay.
permit regulations have tightened up tremendously.
So the money is spread out over different parts of the.
Different parts, the whole facility, the incinerator beds, the scrubbers, the clarifiers, all have to be rebuilt. They're very old.
Anybody have any questions?
Just a couple of administrative issues here. Line 213 is the 1990 wastewater treatment upgrade program, and 214 is the 2010, which is the one that we're talking about tonight. Is the 1990 bond paid off now, Jim?
Line
I
213.
believe it is. And I think,
Yeah.
I don't think that information
Mine
has
says
been
Noel
updated
Crest.
on this one.
Yeah, line 213 says Noel Crest, 1990.
Right up, it's about 2 or 3 lines above that.
Okay,
First one on the list.
yeah, the first one, 20 years, the 109, yeah, that has been,
That's gone.
It's all done,
that's
right?
been retired.
So I can take that one
So line 213
off
should be
the, off
removed
the
then, Brian?
list.
Yeah, the original, upgrade capacity, 1990, that has been retired.
Okay, and Moose Club, we still got a couple more years to go on, apparently.
Yes, we do.
What about Knoll Crest?
Same thing, we have a few years left on that one.
Because that's showing all the way out to 2018.
Yes, I believe so, yes, that's about
If-
right.
If you can go back and
Well,
just
if it was a
double check
20-year bond,
those and
it
give
should've
me
been done
the
by now.
information
Right.
on when they expire and what the current year's amounts are, that'd be great, cause I don't think I've updated this information for one or
And
2
mine looks
years.
older than
I'm
what
not
they
sure.
have, so.
Do you know what those notes were, Jim? How many years they were?
I believe,
As it says right next to it, 20s?
yeah, I believe they were 20 years as Moose Club and Knoll Crest are 20 years. I don't believe we have a 30-year note anywhere.
So these, both these notes should be retired by now then, because 2010 would have retired them.
Probably not, probably would have been 11 or maybe
Depends
12.
on if they started
Because
them
depends
right
on
on
when the
time.
project was actually started and when the first bond payment came in.
So Brian can review those lines as they go out to 2018 and see if those numbers should be removed from those lines?
Well, I'll get with Jim.
We'll go through it, we'll have our administrative assistant go through it and double-check everything, and go through, and what Earl said is typically the bond gets voted in 1 year, the authority gets voted 1 year, by the time, then what we do is we go out, build the project, which can, design and build the project, which can then take another 1 to 2 years, and then the note doesn't actually start up until typically the following year, once we get out of the construction mode. So sometimes we're sometimes 3 years out after the warrant article's been approved.
And then the only other thing on your list is line 220, it's your share of the VACON in 2013.
Yes, and we own 25% of that.
Okay, so that's your contribution?
That can be removed, the
That can-
98,000,
Yeah.
that line?
Yeah, that can be removed, because I don't have.
The
it
entire
right.
line or just the appropriations on the line?
I-
The VACO was done last December.
yeah. Yeah.
That's what was on it.
Yeah, we had projected back on for this year and what, Carl and the DPW, they actually managed to get it, we're looking at
Replacement.
replacement, and they actually got a refurbishment, and that was completely paid for last year.
No, so this 2013 should be zeroed out for that?
Exactly.
Right.
Should I leave the line though and just?
Yes, because it's still has a,
Replacement, it's on the DPW vehicle matrix.
right, it has a fixed asset number, so it needs to remain, and should any future contributions be made out of their 25%, there's a line for them to plug their 25% into,
Or if, a
Or if it
couple
gets
years from
replaced.
now, yeah,
whatever happens,
replacement matrix.
whatever happens with it. But it should stay in as an asset to the DPW and an asset to the sewer.
I think on the Mass Road sewer upgrade, the one right below that, that one might need to be adjusted as well. Was it 179 last year and now it's 89 this year, 89.9?
I actually think, the since we're not complete on that, and the ARA hasn't finished up, I think the 179 got deferred to this year, to be honest with you.
Okay,
But the project is not complete yet,
okay.
technically, so.
If you can double check that as
We'll
well,
go
that'd
through, I'll
be,
go through all these line
yeah,
items.
this whole thing, if
Whole matrix.
you guys can double check
You're gonna have to
that
adjust
and
everything,
get-
Brian.
Yeah.
You got a bunch of adjustments, because you'll even have to adjust the bottom line where the user's share is shown in line 223.
Yeah,
Right,
so-
that's,
So that it
that's
zeroes out.
essentially an equation that,
Plus and minus.
once I change the number in here, it'll automatically show up that same number
Okay.
down below.
Good.
Does anyone else have anything for the sewer department? Either Lowell or Alan or Mark?
I'm glad somebody else saw all that. I mean, I would never have known unless somebody asked questions.
I apologize for the confusion,
Well, the thing is, Alan, we've been looking at it for
I know that.
8 years, 7 years,
12 or 13.
12 or 13 years, so it just sort of rolls into the process.
Okay.
If there's no other questions, I will thank you, Jim, for your time and your service to the sewer commission.
Thank you, allow me for going first, and kinda Carl, and appreciate everything you guys do.
Jim, do you have an email?
You now
My
have
email?
40% of them back to
Jay Bouchard at quantum-cc.com.
Quantum is spelled Quantum dot what?
No, it's hyphen,
Hyphen.
cc.com. That's the easiest, because I rarely look at
Okay.
my home one.
All right, I'll send you an email, and we'll just touch base and get the data.
Looks good, thank you. Have a good evening, folks.
Good night, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. Our second presentation is by the Department of Public Works, and we have the Public Works Director, Carl Quorum, with us tonight. And I'll ask you to identify yourself for the record, please.
Carl Querom, Director of Public Works.
Thank you, sir.
I forget, Tim, it's the pleasure. Do we want to focus on both 2013 or just line by line?
In the, last year, in the effort to make it brief, we just focused on the items that were coming up in this particular year, because the other ones that are in the out years, we've seen them in the past. Does anybody in this committee have any problem with focusing only on the items that are up this year? Vice
I would
Chair?
say this year, and we can take a quick look at next year, but anything beyond that, just 13 and 14 would be my preference.
Okay, and certainly if anybody has questions, happy to answer them.
So will we begin with the vehicle replacement program, Carl? That's the first
Yeah.
thing in our book. I hope we're all on the same agenda here.
As folks that have been on the committee for many years are aware, the snowball keeps rolling down the hill and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. The vehicle matrix, 2 years ago when the budget was substantially cut, we made adjustments to our normal replacement schedule. We pushed heavy trucks out to 12-year schedule and I think pickup trucks out to an 8-year schedule in an effort to try to keep it reasonable. Things have been cut further, so what you see before you is a pretty substantial and aggressive replacement list from DPW for 2013. I'll run through these vehicles and kind of talk about each one real quickly.
If I can hold you up for 1 second, please, Carl.
Sure.
I'm looking through our submission forms. Do we have a single form, Brian, for vehicle replacement program? Or do we have individual forms for the ones that are requested?
Single form.
Just a single form for the replacement of the vehicles, and then the matrix that goes along with it that explains.
I only ask because in the past, we've had the individual forms, which was part of the criteria, was to show why they needed to be replaced and different items, but I guess we can go with this program for this year if we have to.
Well, I'd be happy to get you, what I think we did, Tim, was we had a summary from the mechanic of each of the vehicles, which we'd be happy to do, but I thought last year we decided that
Okay,
we didn't want to
I will,
continue that, but,
I will allow you to refresh my memory, thank you.
well, and again.
And I don't actually remember, Carl, to be
If
honest with you.
if the committee wants that detail, I can certainly provide it.
Okay,
The first item that we have, and I'm looking at the matrix now for the vehicle details, but it's, I believe, your line 46. Freightliner tractor, this is actually one of our over-the-road, long-haul tractors. It's the truck that we bought used as a backup truck when we got into the hauling business. And as you can see, I mean, it's got 650,000 miles on it. It's a decent truck, but it is starting to really show its age and its wear. And the Frontline truck, which we use on a daily basis, is now, whatever it is, probably, I think we started at 95, so that's getting up to 7 years old.
line 68, that particular vehicle.
Yeah, so, you know, I think our thought, you can see the primary vehicle, which we bought new, is up to 326,000 miles. This vehicle hauls on a daily basis. We're hauling a load of refuse up to Biddeford, Maine. I think we haul 2 or 3 loads a week down to Charlestown, Mass, down just inside, just outside of Boston. We're hauling probably weekly trips to Epping. I don't know where else we go, but we're hauling all our own metal, the C&D, the recyclables, the trash. So the truck is on the road constantly, every day. So I think, you know, what we're looking at is getting a new over-the-road vehicle. The newer truck would move to a backup status, and we would continue that program. The next vehicle we have is a 2000 Sterling dump truck, truck 357. This one is kind of right on schedule with the revised 12-year replacement schedule. You know, all of the dump trucks, you know, when they're involved in plowing and sanding and salting operations, they really start to, the undersides of the trucks, the frames, really start to take some abuse. I believe that these older ones, we've now gone to a stainless steel body, which is a lot more durable. But these older ones that we're talking about tonight have steel bodies. They've been rehabbed several times, so they're getting to the point where they really, we need to really think about replacing them.
Is that a six-wheel, Carl?
That one is a six-wheel, yes. The next vehicle, however, which is truck number 355, line 52 on your matrix, that is the 10-wheel truck that we put a new body on last year in 2011. We were hoping to get several years out of it, but the frame has begun to split, which is a very bad sign. So the $185,000 reflects a new cab and chassis, and the stainless steel body that we purchased last year would get moved to the new cab and chassis. But that truck really does need to be replaced. I'm not sure it will even make it through the year passing inspection. The next vehicle, which is line 54 on your matrix, is a Caterpillar loader. It's a 1997 loader. We have two loaders in the department. This is the older of the two. This is a machine that would be out on job sites. We have a newer loader that kind of stays around the pit, around the yard. This particular one would be out on job sites. The next vehicle is the Caterpillar grader. We're asking for $90,000. What our thought is, the grader does not get as much use as it used to. However, it does need some pretty substantial work. I don't have that list with me tonight, but again, I'd be happy to provide it. But the $90,000 is a rehab, and where it was such a, I thought it was a big enough number that it just didn't belong in our reconditioning line in the operating budget, but you guys can decide that, I guess.
It meets the criteria. The project will be over 5 years, and it is over $25,000, so if you do this, you're gonna get another 5 years out of it.
Yeah.
So it does meet the criteria, Carl.
All right. The next few lines are actually in the 2014 matrix. They include a backhoe, 1994 backhoe that we have. That's the old transfer station backhoe, the smaller one that we have. We've pushed this off a few years, but it is getting to the point where we need to do something and replace that. And then we have two of our long-haul trailers, the 100-yard trailers. These were purchased in 2002. I believe they're steel units. Now, the trailers we buy these days, we're buying aluminum, which are a lot lighter. They allow us to haul a lot more weight over the same distance. The steel trailers are definitely, I mean, they're rotted. We've patched doors and patched holes as much as we feel we can. So those are both bought the same year. They both have been used equally and are both ready for replacement. In 2013, again, we have a yard horse. What a yard horse is, if you're not familiar with it, we bought, this is several years ago, this was a military surplus vehicle that we bought, and it doesn't leave the transfer station. It's a little tractor that moves trailers on and off the wall of the compactor buildings. We now have the two buildings that we have to move trailers off and on. It's used to bring trailers up and down from the shop, so it's not an over-the-road vehicle. It's a little tractor just for moving trailers around the yard. And again, it's becoming a real maintenance problem for us.
That's that gray thing?
Yes,
Looks
Yeah.
older than I am.
yes.
That is old.
How many hours do you have on you, Alan? Do you have 3,965 hours?
I'm too old to keep track.
Next, we have a Ford F-550. This is one of the larger pickup truck plows that we have with a, you know, their F-550 has a dump body on the back. 327, it's a 2003. So again, I think this might have been one that got pushed out. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I think this came from last year.
Yeah, I believe this is one of the ones that got pushed out. And we actually have two of them now. They've kind of piled up on each other, because there's also an 04 F-550. And again, these are smaller than our six-wheel dumps, but they're basically doing the same job. They have sanders, they're out there spreading salt, plowing, they each have root. So they very similar to what our other trucks are doing.
Carl, if they're the same vehicle, they're both F-550s and they both want sand and plow equipment, why are they two different prices? Is that just a misprint?
You know, it's probably just a, you know, from one being bumped out and didn't get updated.
That's right, it didn't get updated to the new
Yeah.
price, okay.
Yeah, that would be my guess. I'll look at that, Tim, and figure out which one of them is.
It doesn't really matter, I just was, so it just to make things all be the same.
And then the next vehicle is, and when Alan started talking to Jim about a 40% share, I was gonna suggest maybe we talk to him about sharing the pickup truck. Sewer Commissioner Crane reminded me last year when we got talking about the replacement pickup truck, that
I remember,
Sewer bought the first truck,
you
and
buy the second one.
DPW uses it more than Sewer does, so it's up to the town to replace it for the second time. Hopefully Sewer will get it the third time, but, so anyway, it's reflected 100% as a town cost vehicle, and I can attest that it does spend a great deal of time working on public works kind of stuff as well. So that is essentially the matrix.
There are two more,
wait a minute,
two
yeah,
more 14s,
2000.
Carl.
Yeah, our first,
Line
the
73.
older skid steer that we have is up for replacement in 2014. I think we now have 3 of them, if I'm not mistaken. And I believe this one, 2004, no, this was the highway, this is the first one we had in highway. That's the machine that's out doing the mill and fill and sweeping. It's on almost every job that you see DPW doing, because it's a very versatile. A lot of attachments can do a lot of different things for us. And it's also what we maintain the sidewalks with nowadays. And then the last piece for 2014 is our roll-off trailer, and what that is, all of the large boxes we have for demolition debris and metal, the large 40-yard cans at the transfer station. This is the trailer that, again, our long-haul tractor would hook to. Those big boxes, when they're full, get dragged up onto a set of rails that are part of this trailer. It's then hauled wherever it needs to get hauled, and it's dumped. So it's you know, a very heavily used trailer, and just by sheer the way it's designed and functions, it tends to get tired. So that kind of is all the 13 and 14 vehicles. If anybody has questions on any of the others, I'd be happy to try to entertain them.
I have two,
I just.
go ahead, Brian, you can go first.
Okay. I had a couple of yellow highlighted
Yeah, I was gonna ask you what
things
those
on
are.
there. Carl, I just highlighted those because, when I was looking at the mileage updates that had been given to me,
Yep.
those actually went down, I think,
Which
in mileage.
ones are they?
Or-
Because I don't have a
They're-
highlight.
Line
They're
50,
actually dark-
50,
darker on
53 and
yours.
71.
So if you go to the,
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
line
okay,
53
all
and
right.
71, they're
That one,
dark.
Yep,
if you can check on the actual
Yeah.
mileage on those two,
okay,
that's the only reason I highlighted those.
okay.
I have a homework assignment for you, Carl.
Yes, sir.
Your department priority is all twos, even on the ones that you are really urgently need. So
Yeah,
could you review those priorities and resubmit to Brian so that when we begin our deliberations, we know what is more or less urgent to the
Sure.
department? I know they're probably all urgent, but
yep, yep,
you're gonna need to pick and choose between your children here, and
okay.
Which kid do you love more?
All right, I'd be happy to do that.
so just, I'd just like to see you update your priority.
Yep,
Because I don't think you wanna stick with all twos. Maybe you do, I don't know. Give you the option.
all right.
Any questions for Carl on the vehicle matrix before we move on?
I'm just concerned that we're seeing a lot of trucks lumped into 13 and 14 and very little in the out years. Is that because we're in a position where we've deferred some of the stuff the last few years, Carl, and now it's time to pay the piper?
Yeah. You know what, I view my role as the department head to make the community aware of what's in the best interest of the community. I can't control the budget, so I understand the budget process, and there's only so many dollars to go around. But I don't feel I'm doing my job if I just willy-nilly push vehicles out for the sake of budgeting. So what I'm identifying here is these vehicles are overdue for replacement. Some of them are getting to the point where I call them a safety concern. So I'm gonna wave that flag very loudly, and every year they get deferred and pushed out, I'm gonna wave that flag very loudly, because I get the one benefit for the things I do, you know, the two chiefs have a little bit tougher job than me, because they deal in what ifs and what might happen. I get to deal in reality. I get to deal in broken infrastructure. And if you don't wanna pay for it today, that's fine, but you will pay for it tomorrow, and it's gonna cost more tomorrow. So I get to deal in absolute, and vehicles are absolute. They can only last so long. They do a hard work, they do a lot of work, they fall apart sooner or later, they get set aside, and the town has a problem. So I view as my job to highlight that.
Well, you know, Carl, for, I think the benefit of those that haven't been on the committee and have some of the historical perspective, and this is certainly even before your tenure, but I know you're familiar with this, we had a situation in town where for years, we weren't buying vehicles, and all of a sudden, the entire fleet goes down the toilet all at the same time. And that was when, I wanna say it was back in
92.
92. And we wound up with this lease purchase deal
Yeah.
for what, 6 or 7 vehicles, I think?
We had 6 new Mack trucks.
And they all died at the same time.
I think number line 53 may be one of the leftovers from that deal.
It is probably the last of.
I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, my concern is we're headed that direction again, Earl, and I can't wave the banner high enough or loud enough that we don't wanna go there. That's just not a good, I was the lucky guy that got to dig out of that hole, and, cause I started in 97, and I just don't wanna see us get back into that hole.
Well, we're already sort of there with purchase of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on the other page, the first page, 9 vehicles in the 2013.
Yeah.
I mean, and if all of those die again in the same year, we're just gonna run into that in 10 or 12 more years whenever they expire.
Just for historical perspective, Carl, of the vehicles that were moved into the budget in this past budget year, how many of them survived the budget? The trash truck survived it?
I think the only vehicle this year is the trash truck.
Okay, and you asked for 3 last year. You asked for the Sterling, the Vacon, and you asked for
One of the, yeah, blew my glasses right out.
the
the,
Vacon, the Sterling, and a dump truck.
Uh,
I guess I said that wrong.
and one of the
The trash truck.
F-550s.
Yeah, the trash truck.
F-550s also.
And the sewer pickup, as I remember.
Yeah, that's possible too.
That was last year,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
All right. Ellen, please.
Just a technical question on vehicles. There was a discussion at one of my other meetings of LNG vehicles. Nashua was doing a little bit. DPW's got something out in Concord, bid now. Any future in that for this community, or?
Well, that entirely depends on my big brother to the east. To get into LNG or to consider any of those, you need a fueling station.
Mhm.
And the cost of a fueling station for the size fleet we have, unless we wanted to wholesale invest, would be astronomical.
Okay.
I have had conversations with Manchester, as a matter of fact, when they were planning their new highway facility, the original plan had an LNG fueling facility at it. I would have been very interested in looking at our fleet to see if we could work out a deal, if there was a place to fuel it. But with the limited budget they had, that was one of the things they kind of threw over the side for their fleet.
Okay.
So, till the fueling station is somewhere nearby, I really don't think it's something we can look at.
I think Alan's question is born of our last planning board meeting where we had our energy chapter for the master plan discussion.
Yeah.
And Southern Hampshire Planning told us that 65% of the energy use in the town of Goffstown is in its vehicles. And I think that's where some of this discussion is
Mm.
coming out of.
Yeah, no, and it is.
Reduce the amount of energy consumption on our vehicles. I mean, the buildings are using a lot less energy than the vehicles are. So if we can find a way to do what Alan's saying,
Yeah.
it could realize a savings for us.
Not to throw my mechanic under the bus, but boy, I pushed hard when we were spec'ing the garbage truck. I tried everything under the sun to get launch control assist or, something that would help. Because those vehicles in particular, the trash vehicles, are probably the highest energy use vehicles that we drive. And we actually did get some quotes for some of that technology, and the cost was just astronomical, like $80,000 to put a launch assist. And when you start talking about 30% more the cost of the truck to get it, it takes a long time to make that back.
Then he needs a segregated bay in his garage to do maintenance on them. They have to be segregated from diesels and gas.
Well, okay, well, I guess we're not going there right now. Not without another garage. All right, so we've completed the vehicle list. Is any other questions on the vehicle matrix? Okay, if not, we'll move to your Public Works programs submissions for capital projects.
Okay, well, first and foremost, the top line is always the road plan. And if you look at your matrix and you look at 2012, I think that tells you the whole story. I probably don't need to present much more. Obviously, the default budget decimated the amount of work we're gonna get done this year. So I think it's fair to say most of the major work got kind of thrown overboard, and we're more doing a maintenance program this year, trying to keep up work we've done in the past, just try to keep up with it. The good news of all of it is, we did manage to finagle a couple of very large projects. We leveraged the sewer department investment in pavement on Mass Road. We decided that it would be very in our best interest to work with that investment. So we put some money into overlaying the rest of Mass Road, and decided that it would be prudent to upgrade the drainage. So what you folks have been looking at for many, many years are two projects on Mass Road, one being the Mass Road drainage, and the other being a Mass Road sidewalk from Danis to Lynchville Park. What we decided to do is not a full-blown drainage study of the Mass Road corridor and upgrade all the pipes. However, do a maintenance program and fix the known problems where we knew there were holes in pipes. So all of the old aluminum pipe that was in Mass Road has at this point in time been replaced. So the drainage system down there is now at least sound. The old structures that were really rotted and falling in have been replaced. And we're in the process now of extending the sidewalk from where we left it off on Lynchville Park, at Lynchville Park. We're working on extending it out to Danis. So over the next couple of weeks, you'll see curbing installed and that sidewalk put in. That was all more or less the silver lining in the budget cut, because we didn't really have enough money to do any kind of major road projects, but we did have enough money to upgrade drainage and get that sidewalk done. So the net effect on CIP is you had a couple very large $1 million type projects that are now gonna come off the matrix for the time being, because we managed to stick enough Band-Aids in there that we think Mass Road will be just fine for the foreseeable future.
So Carl, what line are we on right now?
Well, that's the road plan.
That's still on the road plan line?
Yeah, and I'll connect the dots as we go, but
Because you did have a Mass Road drainage plan for Pinardville in there at $2+ million in the past.
that's
So
correct.
that line has been removed temporarily or permanently?
Well, if you look down, the only part of that that remains, and what you're seeing on this matrix is it's been removed entirely for now. There is a phase of the Mass Road drainage project that we have not done, which is, it's actually on, if you go down Rockland, West Side Ave, and I forget the other little side street in there, but there's extending the drainage towards Manchester up into that neighborhood. That phase of the project has already been designed. Our intention is we'll install that when we get to those roads in the road plan. When we're gonna go in that neighborhood to do the roads, we'll do the drainage project at that time. So it's kinda off the matrix for right now.
It would have been, what, line 151?
51 has Mass Road drainage, but it
Yeah.
doesn't have any money in any of the lines.
So
in
that
any of the
line,
years.
are we gonna say that line will come out? Because that will be blended into other projects in the future?
Yeah, yeah, for now, that's fine.
You can always add it back in.
Right.
So,
Well,
Brian,
How does
I'll
that
delete
track
that
with
one.
171, though?
7-foot metal culvert rehab, that looks like a separate project.
That's a separate project. That's actually a new project, Earl.
Okay.
I'll talk about that when we
All
get there.
What about, you also mentioned the Wallace and Mastro, or the sidewalk to Dana Park to
Yeah,
Monroe
that used to
Park?
be
Yes.
in, that's line
That,
160.
that also has no money on the line?
That's
Should
correct.
I delete that one as well?
That one you can definitely delete.
That was a standalone project, which we kept shoving for years,
Yeah.
because we thought it wasn't as high priority as some of the other
I
stuff.
think we
Well, it
nailed
was
that.
also the drainage portion of it made it almost $1 million project.
So we're gonna
We've
take
kinda
out
picked away at
160
that.
That's what you're
and
working on currently, right?
151. Okay, Brian?
Yeah, 151 and 160.
Yeah, those lines can be removed.
What about 161?
Well, let's let Carl go through the
All right.
stuff, and we'll get to it when we
Yeah.
get there.
Okay,
So you're back to you, Carl. We just,
Okay. So as far as the rest of the road plan, I did not show any changes. Year after year after year since 2001, I have always come in and reflected, here's what we proposed in 2001, and I've kind of stuck to that story. So despite the budget cuts last year and the fact that it obviously sets us back, I'm still coming in saying, here's what we said in 2001, we're sticking to the story. I'll tell you that we're gonna start to see the impacts, because we had, last year was pretty substantial cuts, in 2012, and then this year, obviously, $1.5 million cut. The list is falling back, and we get a lot of calls from folks and have to break the news to them that, their street was off in the distant future, now is way off in the distant future, so. Anyway, it's just a reality, that's the way it is, we'll live with whatever we have to, but, we're just presenting what we've always presented. The South Mast drainage bond payment is just that's that green drainage project. That project is complete now, so the first payment will come due this year and subsequent years. And the same, I don't know why she showed the Lynchville Danis Park bond payment. I'm not sure what the out years of that are. That's actually the STAG grant, right? The water connections.
yeah, that's the
Sorry,
water line job.
Which line again?
That's the 147 Lynchville Danis Park bond payment.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's the Stag Ramp project, which is still active. I don't know that much about that project.
That hasn't been in
myself.
the matrix in the past, has it, Brian? I've never seen that on our
I
list.
think so.
You seen LVDP in our
Not
matrix?
in that, see what last year's final matrix
I'll
tells us.
double check and see if that's still in or not. It may be done.
Last year's, hang on.
My
On
guess
page
is there's
4,
a bond
Earl.
payment
Yeah.
with an offsetting revenue. Because the idea of that is whatever bond payment there is will be offset by, it's paid by the residents down there, so it's,
And the,
There should be
and the
an
grant
offsetting
was the difference, right?
Yeah, no, not on there.
I didn't think it was before. I
Yeah.
never saw that before.
The next project, the Shirley Hill Road Cemetery Wall, this has been on the matrix for as long as I've been doing matrices. And I pushed it out yet again. You know, the story with that is, we're in no rush. Right now, we're focused on West Lawn, because that's where we have the most burials, and that's where we really need the space, the immediate need for space. Shirley Hill does need space eventually, but the minute we extend that wall to the end, we suddenly now have all that extra acreage to maintain. And as long as we can get away with not extending that and not having to maintain that field, the better it is for us. So I think I don't remember where that used to be in the matrix, but I slid it out a little, just because I know it's not the top priority for the cemetery trustees. They're more focused on getting West Lawn finished.
I think the first year I was on the committee, it goes back, I don't know, maybe 98 or 99,
Yeah.
that was being deferred out.
Yeah, when I first got it, I think the very first year I was here, we built
Yeah.
the road and the first section wall, and ever since then, we've been sliding it out.
Was that the 80,000 or the 2017, Carl?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Back on the LVDP and South Mass Drainage bond payment, both of those. I recall now talking to Sue and looking at what the adopted budget had been for last year, and there being bond payments factored into that adopted budget, and that was the amount that was for last year that was adopted, so I don't know if there's any remaining payments or anything left, but maybe if Megan can check into that and
Yeah.
and give me information. The other one, South Mass Drainage bond payment, it reflects 72,000 was in the CIP, 476, but then I put a 83,652. That was, I believe, the 72,000 plus something else got added into
Pine
it.
Ridge Drainage.
Okay,
Yeah, which won't happen in 12, but we're building the
Right.
project in 12, so the payment will increase next year.
okay. So for the proposed CIP, should it still be 72,476, or it's gonna
I'll
be
have
something
to
different?
check. Yeah, I'll have to check. There's certainly this year, as a matter of fact, we just had our pre-construction meeting, so the work will be starting in the next few weeks. Well, I think it's gonna start as soon as school's done. We're gonna finish the drainage on Pine Ridge, which is, the backside of Knoll Crest where it comes out. That section of the South Mass Drainage project had to be cut because the bids exceeded our budget allocation and authority back then. We went back to town meeting, got authority to do a little more, got some more ARA money. So there's about $120,000 worth of work that's gonna get finished in July, June.
And that ties into the South Mass
Yeah.
drainage system and then discharges ultimately into the lake
Yes,
on the overflow system,
that's correct.
for those of you that don't know what's going on over there. It was all one big project at the
Yes,
very beginning,
originally
correct?
it was one big project, and
It got cut up.
it basically, DES had some ARA money left over at the end of everything, so they gave us a little bit more to finish it.
Okay,
Okay,
we are down to West Lawn.
the West Lawn Cemetery expansion, that budget ended up getting cut. So basically what got cut out, what we did, and I don't remember if I submitted with the packet the actual detailed budget estimate for that whole expansion project with the various stages.
It was in last year's.
Yeah, there was phases,
Yeah.
1, 2, and 3, as I remember.
Right. And so what was supposed to be happening this year was we were supposed to be putting the fence around it and surveying in the lots. With the budget situation, what it was, and the cuts that we were trying to find, we ended up cutting that in half. What we are probably looking at doing this year is just the fence on 114, the front fence, and survey a section of lots so that we have some lots available to start with. And then when we get a further budget allocation, we'll work towards the rest. There has been a change in state law with the requirement for fencing a cemetery. So I haven't really fully evaluated what that means, but it may mean that we don't have to fence the entire thing. As a matter of fact, that's what the law says, that we don't have to fence the entire thing. But I haven't had a chance to sit down with the cemetery trustees and work through what their thoughts on that are. So I am reflecting the balance of what was supposed to be this year's project in next year. And the remainder of it, we kind of pushed out. The last phase, we pushed out a couple of years in 2015. And the final phase of that was to be, let me refresh my memory here. Oh, it was just landscaping, some trees and planting, just to make it look really nice. So that final phase was a landscaping phase.
Where was the paving in which phase, Carl?
The
paving
paving
driveway?
was going to be in,
This middle phase, the 13 phase?
yeah. No, it was in 2011 was, well, the first year, the first phase is when it was supposed to be. And we just got too late in the season, so we didn't get it done last year.
So the $32,059 that got adopted in last year's budget would be partly towards paving.
So will it be paved this year as
right?
part of that
Yes.
funding? Okay.
Yeah.
And the portion of the fencing will be done?
Matter of fact, I'm kind of surprised it's not paved already. It must be because of the rain, because I know that was one of our early targets, was to get over there and get it done, because it was essentially ready.
So at this point then, with these items that are gonna be completed in this year, approved money, you'll be able to actually sell graves if you needed to, or is it gonna require the 13 allocation to be able to sell graves and be able to actually use it for
No,
burial?
I think we'll be ready to sell graves. I'm hoping we'll have a section
Good.
surveyed in, and the fence and the road, so I think we'll be ready.
For some of the members that weren't here, the cemetery trustees expressed, the fact that they had 30 or 40 or 50 graves left in West Lawn, and they were out of graves, and they really needed to move with this, so it's kind of moved along quickly.
That's an enterprise activity anyways, right?
Yeah, they estimated almost $1 million in revenues at the end of that project for sale of graves, if my memory serves me
Yeah,
correct.
except that it's not really an enterprise fund, Alan, because
Yeah, it goes to the general
Yeah, it
fund.
goes into the general fund. It would be nice if the cemetery was an enterprise fund and was able to retain its own money, but that is not how it's worked.
But other things happen out of that money, Carl's crew to maintain the cemetery, I'm sure, gets, money back and do the burials, the graves have to all be dug, the highway crew does all that too, so. There's a lot of other elements other than just grass and headstones.
Okay, I was just, I don't know. I never cared to go in the cemetery, to be quite honest with you.
You'll be there sooner or later. He's not there.
Somewhere, someday.
Somewhere.
Okay, can we move on?
Yeah. So the next project down the list is the Worthley Hill road drainage upgrade. And just to kind of refresh everybody's memory, or for those of you that don't know, there's a development plan for the top of Worthley Hill, status unknown as to exactly when that'll get going. However, when we did the work on South Mast and we upgraded all the drainage on South Mast, we made provisions for all of the drainage that comes down Worthley Hill Road. There's currently a 12-inch metal pipe that comes down and carries all the flow tries to carry all the flow from that hill. On a good rainy day, if you drive up Worthley Hill Road, you'll see water spraying up out of the side of the road. That's what's left of the 12-inch drainage pipe. The developer, part of his deal with the development is from Tyler Drive up, he's gonna rebuild Worthley Hill Road. So that'll get upgraded. The upper part of the road will get upgraded. But the section between Lamson Ave and Tyler Drive is kind of up to us to deal with. So when we did South Mast, we made provisions for a larger pipe to carry up the hill. That's what this project's all about. It's to extend the drainage from where we left it off at Tyler Drive, at Lamson Ave, up to the intersection of Tyler Drive. If you're familiar with that area, it is a very wet area. There's a lot of groundwater up there. I can show you a couple of pictures of trucks flopped over, that fall through the road because it's so wet in the springtime. And it's just something it's a constant maintenance problem that we just need to deal with.
Is 2013 realistic for that, Carl?
It all hinges on what happens with the budget, what happens with the road plan. If we sustain, with the road plan, the problem we have right now is, being the way our budget structure works in the default budget, we are climbing out of an enormous hole. And, part of what happened with the voters last year, I'm sure, was, they looked at, if we vote no, this is the budget. If we vote yes, oh my God, this is the budget. Next year, it's even a bigger, oh my God. And I'm very anxious to see how the Budget Committee tackles that this year, because it's going to be, it's going to be an enormous, everybody looks at every project and says, boy, we got to do that, boy, we got to do that, boy, well, it comes down to we got to have money. And without the money, we can't get it done.
Well, I'm not talking about the money. I mean, in terms of the timing of doing that particular section of Worthley Hill. Is it gonna be realistic, given whatever the status is of that development up the road?
The only thing that would sway me is if they were in full construction. Because if I had the money now, I could do it this year. We're ready to go up the hill. We don't need them for anything to do our piece. If they're in full swing and they have construction vehicles running up and down the road, all day long, I might rethink, well, maybe we want to wait until they're done. But as soon as I could get the money to fix that drainage, we gotta fix the drainage. So it's one of
Except
those
that
things.
conversely, if you're gonna put a big project up the hill, it'd be nice to have the downhill drainage ready to accept it.
This is true.
The other thing that came out of our planning board meetings, and Alan knows about this because he was chair at the time, is that we actually have a net decrease in the amount of water because of on-site mitigation as part of the project.
Right.
With detention ponds and such, so there is a little bit of wiggle room built into it, but certainly it would be nice to have the project done prior to that subdivision being built. Alan, if you'd like to speak to that, go ahead.
That drainage system is amazing in that street. If you go to the top manhole at the top of the hill, the turnaround, water's running into that manhole 365 days a year.
Yeah.
The end manhole, that whole hillside is nothing but water up there.
Okay, well, I just wanted to reinforce,
Like everywhere else in town.
wanted to reinforce Carl's argument as why it needs to be done sooner than later. Okay, next.
The next project is a generator for the transfer station. This project was born in the town's hazardous mitigation plan. When we redid our hazardous mitigation plan a few years ago, one of the key things that we identified was, the transfer station it fuels all the town vehicles. You got the health and safety issue of if there is no power for an ongoing period of time, how do we load our trash out of here? Our vehicles are all set up for compactors. The town of Bedford has open top trailers that they can just dump into. We're not set up that way. So I think the combination of all of those things, we decided that we really ought to have a generator at the transfer station. We are hoping that we're going to get the lion's share of the cost of that through a grant through Homeland Security. and I've actually begun the grant pursuit process. I've talked to the folks up at the state emergency management office, and I'm starting to pull that application together, and I've just got to meet with them to dot the i's and cross the t's. And so hopefully by the time we get to budget season, I'll have a grant already lined up to
How
go
big do you
along with
plan
that.
for a generator, Carl? How big of a generator?
You know, I don't remember, Mark, but it's, I mean, you can see the cost is, we're talking a total of, you know, almost $150,000, so it's a pretty substantial generator to run everything down there.
So you don't have any current backup power at all?
We can make fuel come out of the nozzle if we absolutely have to, but it's probably not something I'd want to talk about on TV.
We did that the last time.
Yeah.
Not fun.
There's been a whole series of these electrical generators being bid in the state of New Hampshire in the last 3 months,
Yep.
a whole score of them. So it's not just us, it's a whole bunch,
No,
it's
it's,
a whole bunch of communities.
your emergency operations can't get very far if there's no fuel in the trucks.
Okay, next is the salt brine equipment you have at line 154.
Yeah, and I think this might be another one I slid out. You know, I'm very interested in pursuing that program. I'm absolutely convinced. You know, I watch, and especially the last couple of years commuting up from Massachusetts, I get firsthand look at the difference in the DOT roads where they brine and where they don't brine. And I'm absolutely convinced that we want to get there. However, given budget constraints and kind of where we're at, we are still, DPW is still fine-tuning our salt management plan with our scale house and what we've been doing. We've really curbed our salt use over the last several years. So I think everybody's convinced me that let's get that completely under control. Let's get our liquid into the mix so that that's completely under control, and then we'll go down and start really looking at salt brine. But it's definitely something I want to keep on the matrix. If you're ever out driving around prior to a snowstorm, when you get out to the end of 114, just before you go on 101, if you're ever out there when a storm is just starting, just look at the difference in the pavement. That's all you're going to do, and you'll be absolutely convinced. They do the beltway around Manchester with it, and boy, it's night and day, absolutely night and day. So definitely something I want to keep pursuing. The next one is the Kendall Hadley drainage installation. Let's call that a placeholder,
Yeah, that's a good
because we've gone through the grant application and we just cannot justify the cost-benefit criteria to get the grant money to do that project. So I don't know what we'll do, but for now, it's kind of out there in the matrix. It'd be a great thing to do, but it just is not something we're gonna get grant money for anytime in the near future, unless we have a lot more losses.
Kendall Hadley, just Kendall Hadley Way itself, or Kendall Hadley?
Yeah, this is the result of, we hired a consultant after the 06, 07 floods, when Town Hall and the businesses along here got flooded. We hired a consultant to study the whole system and what was happening. And their recommendation at the end of it all was to actually relocate Dowbrook. Dowbrook now runs into a culvert on Church Street and flows under the building that is the old video store, through the parking lot, under the Gap building, through Larry's parking lot over in the hardware store. And that system is, I mean, it's a good system, you know, as far as being sound. It's just too small. It's an old granite box culvert that cannot take the amount of flow that is forced through it in a heavy rain. So what the consultant came up with is a new box culvert, and basically split Dowbrook, and the majority of it would go through a new box culvert we'd put a box culvert right down Kendall Hadley and out to the river by Northeast Sheet Metal. And then the culvert under the parking lots would just continue to pick up the flow from High Street and Summer Street, kind of that end of the watershed. So that's the engineering fix, but it's a big culvert and a lot of money to put it in. The next one is the Henry Bridge wing wall repairs. We do have money in 2012 to deal with West Union Street. We've just filed all the wetlands permits for that project, so as soon as we get the okay from DES, we'll be putting that out to bid to replace the wing walls on West Union. We'll see how that project goes. Henry Bridge, this is the big bridge now, the truss bridge on Henry Bridge Road, was not in as dire shape as the one on West Union, but it is definitely getting to the point where we need to deal with it. The walls are actually bulging there, which is what concerns us. Is not West Union, the blocks were literally rotted away. Henry Bridge is a little bit different. The walls are actually bulging, which probably is more of a concern, but
How old is that bridge, Carl?
that was done in '95, I
Don
think.
Hambridge did that bridge, I remember way back.
Which
when
one,
they
is that the new one across the main span?
Yeah, the truss bridge.
They took down the arch bridge
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
everybody would run into with a tall truck,
Well,
Yeah.
just, people run into it still.
not with a tall truck,
Yeah,
maybe a
Just look
wide
at the
truck.
cuts in the plates.
yeah, yeah.
Is that, is 20 years a short lifespan for those wing walls?
Well, the problem for those Versalock blocks, yes. Versalock blocks, as we've learned, back in '95, '96, '97, that was the thing to do if you had to build a big wall cheap. However,
Salt.
anywhere where you get chloride contact, that is not a material you should use. And unfortunately, we didn't learn that until we had a bunch of them in place, this being one of them. And the way the road is designed in the wing walls, all of the runoff kind of coming down Greer Road and Henry Bridge Road just kind of pours over the wall there. It's just the way it is. And it's eating away the blocks. So we definitely will not put Versalock blocks back in that location.
Poured concrete wall?
Well, what we're gonna do on West Union is Ready Rock blocks. They're the big precast, but it's precast concrete. We're gonna try that.
You gonna encapsulate the old wall with a new one or tear it down?
West Union, we're gonna tear it out.
Okay.
I don't think we have enough room to encapsulate it. Henry Bridge, we might try to encapsulate it because it's really high. So I think we might try to build in front of it.
Okay, the next project is Pleasant Street, which is part of when you're gonna do the road.
Yeah, that actually is, and just to refresh everybody's memory, it's not the full bridges. The bridges are actually fine. What this money is for is the two bridges on Pleasant Street. The bridges were put in, and at a later point in time, the town decided to put a sidewalk up Pleasant Street. So they put what I think is just old railroad rails from bank to bank and put a slab on the top of it and put a fence. And so it's really the sidewalk that needs to be replaced or dealt with, which is why it's only $80,000. So when we do the street, which we very much hope will be next year, we're gonna have to deal with the sidewalks on the bridges. Let's see, the next three are off your matrix. Well, actually, one of them's going away, the sidewalk from Danis to Moose Club. And Wallace and Mast is complete, so that can come off.
So line 161 should be removed?
Yep. And Pleasant Street, Mass Road improvements, these are the two intersection projects. With the default budget, we decided to, we being the selectmen and DPW, that would be the one of the best projects to kind of throw overboard. But the grant money is still there for us, so if we budget it and allocate the money in this budget cycle, we're still good, we still have the grant, and we can move forward. So that's what our plan would be. Aggregate screening equipment, we're gonna actually, I think this year, we're gonna bring a screening plan in on a rental basis and try it out and see how it works. So I think we pushed, I believe we were asking for this in 13 last year, but we pushed it out a year because we're gonna try renting it, see how it works out for a year or two.
Do you wanna just leave it in as a placeholder then for now?
Yeah,
Right. Line 164 at the top of page 5.
reconstruction of Main Street in North Mass is another one that Earl and I have been talking about forever. You know, this is our main downtown thoroughfare. So it's not just reclaiming any old street in town. This is kind of the signature of the downtown. So what we envision here is a first-year design, which I'm proposing, and let's tackle it in 2013. Come up with a good, consistent streetscape, what we want the street to look like. North Mass is desperately in need of a drainage design. The drainage system out there, I think, is 6-inch pipe that runs out through the fields to the brook out back. So there's just no drainage facility there. The drainage that's in Main Street has no bottom on it. It's old metal pipe. We've TV'd it, and it's basically just a metal arch with a dirt bottom. Out by the trestle, there's blockages that we can't deal with. The Vacon literally went right through the side of the pipe, and we lost a nozzle in there trying to open it up during a storm. So the entire drainage infrastructure down the main corridor is in what I'd call complete failure. So it's just something we have to deal with. We just gotta stop putting it off and get to it. Aside from the effect of our downtown and the condition it's in, and you know, Steve Monier comes in and every year gives his impassioned speech about economic development and the impression people get when they drive into town, and he's right on the mark, but it is what it is. Without money, it isn't gonna happen. So that's what that project is. It's dealing with those two streets. It used to be a grant project. We were gonna get, it was in the state's 10-year plan. It got bumped out, I'm not sure where. It's somewhere out in like 2028 or 29 in the state's plan. So if we wait for them, there won't be a street out there for us to rebuild by the time we get to it. So I think we just have to face it that it's gonna be a local project. Line 165 is a new sidewalk up College Road. This may shift. We have not had a chance to deal with the $1.5 million budget cuts in the long-term road plan yet. Over the next couple of months, we'll be doing that. We'll be juggling, shifting roads out and shifting priorities. The College Road sidewalk was our best guess as to when College Road was in the matrix to get done. My suspicion is that's not gonna be 2015 at this point. It'll be in an out year somewhere. So I'll try to get to that sooner rather than later, and we'll try to keep that in alignment with when the best guess at the road is. And kind of the same thing goes with Catamount Back Road. That intersection has been, I can remember Dick Georgianis when he was the chair of this committee, jumping up and down over that intersection. That's the planning board back in probably the early 90s wanted that intersection done when all the developments were happening up in that part of town. It's been put off, and you know, our intention was when we did Catamount Road, we would realign the intersection and deal with the grades for the intersection. Again, it could shift when we look at the priorities in all the roads.
So that's just a realignment of that pitch when you come out of the intersection?
Yeah.
Also the sight line and drainage improvements as you described in the past.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty substantial, I mean, if you drive up there and look, the grade coming off Back Road is pretty severe, and that needs to drop considerably to get a
I know,
reasonable
I live
grade.
up there and I get stuck in the snow, cause I don't have four-wheel drive, but I've gotten stuck right there at that intersection a few times, so it's.
Well,
it
you're
is
gonna
an
get
issue.
stuck a few more years from the looks of it, Ryan.
Yeah, I know.
Carry any snowshoes in your trunk.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next one.
So the next one is pipe inspection, camera and equipment. This year, we're gonna be doing some work on starting to inventory our underground assets, and we're gonna, it'll be with rented equipment to get started, but, we have that ViewWorks software package, and we at this point have our inventory, I'll call it our two-dimensional inventory, completely in there. We know where all our pipes are and our structures and manholes. The phase we're at now is we gotta start getting inside of those assets and looking at condition. Just like now, we rate pavement. We drive over the pavement and we rate every crack and every deformity in our roads, and that's how we establish our priorities for road repair. That's the step with ViewWorks we're at with the pipes, where we'll start running cameras up the pipes, looking at the condition of the pipes. And it takes a lot of things into account. What is the pipe servicing? If it's a major, like up to the high school or something like that, that might be a higher priority pipe than, just one up a dead-end street to a couple of residential properties. So it takes all those priorities into account, and it'll help us prioritize where we should put our energy and efforts into upgrading our infrastructure. So the inspection equipment is a major part of that. We need a way to get in and look at these facilities. We got a quote to start in Pinardville a couple of years ago, have a private contractor come in and TV a good chunk of town. It was like $240,000 to have them just come do part of town. So it's very expensive when you start getting into miles and miles and miles of pipe. So our thought is that we should have our own equipment. We end up renting, when we have backups and stuff, we end up renting equipment often, but if we're gonna wholesale start TVing our system, we should have the ability to do that ourselves.
Will this result in additional personnel, or are you gonna be able to handle this with the people you have?
Our hope is that it becomes a winter activity with the people we have.
Okay.
That's
Just
our hope.
wondering if there's any,
There's no
additional
plan
expense.
to add people.
okay.
I also believe it's gonna become a requirement of our NPDES stormwater permit if EPA ever does reissue the thing.
What's the rental cost on something like that?
I don't know of anybody that just rents the equipment. It's pretty high maintenance.
So there's no opportunity to try to rent equipment initially to try to see how the program would work?
We have talked to some vendors about demoing, them coming down, letting us demo something, if we were gonna buy it, but to just rent, I'm not gonna say there's not, but I haven't found anybody that does that.
Neither have I.
Usually it comes with the operator and then you pay a lot of money.
Okay, line 168.
This was another deferred project that got cut last year. This represents the first of many facilities that we need to maintain. These are all stormwater facilities. I forget if there's 37 or 50, but back in the mid-'80s, the planning board, when they approved new developments, part of the deal, you had to manage your stormwater, so let's put a detention pond in. Those ponds were always tucked out in the back corner somewhere where it wasn't, they didn't want to give up the good land for a detention pond. So there it is, out in the back corner. There's no good access to them. At this point, 20 years later, they're overgrown, they're filled in with sediment, no longer functioning. Quite frankly, the town has more or less ignored them over all these years, even though that we were responsible for them, largely because we couldn't get at them, nor do we have the people to really get at them. So we have a lot of these facilities that need to be upgraded. The whole idea of them when they're designed is to prevent increased runoff off-site, causing damage to properties downstream. If the thing's filled in and overgrown with trees, guess what? You might as well not have built it in the first place. So all of the stuff we were trying to avoid when they were put in, that's what's happening. And when we experience all these flooding events, we become keenly aware of, geez, if that detention pond was working, maybe that wouldn't have been so bad. So it's something we need to deal with. Again, as always, you keep hearing me say it, but it comes down to needing the money to do it. These, at this point, have to be kind of completely reconstructed. And what we proposed last year was two of them that are glaring examples to us, one up on the corner of Maple Ave and one up on Tyler Drive that we think really need to be dealt with first, but we have a pretty good sized inventory that as soon as we get those done, we're just moving on to the next one and the next one and the next one. Hopefully someday get caught up with them.
So this is a multiple year project, Carl?
Yeah.
Well, this,
I've got it in this.
This is a forever
This
project.
is
Yes,
a
well, you see,
project.
I'm gonna take issue with this one because this goes back to the sidewalk maintenance thing that we discussed with Carl in the past. The projects have to be specified and the amount has to be set aside for the project. So we may have to ask him to set aside Maple Avenue Tyler money and align 168. And then as other ponds become available, we're gonna have to add lines and move them into the matrix. Because we cannot, by our statute, just run a line out like that without it having a specific purpose and a project, a named project.
True.
So we might have to revise that, Carl, slightly so that it fits the parameters
Yep, and
of
that's,
the CIP.
if we had, and this is a question, Tim, if we had the full inventory with estimates on the next 6 or 7 years, could it be lumped like the road plan where it's, and
The road
each year wouldn't be a set amount, it would be boom, boom, boom?
I'll
whatever
only
it is.
say no because the road plan was voted on by the voters and approved as a package item to be put into the budget, as I remember. So I think if you can show us
Well, but
1,
can-
2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years out, if you can show us 6 projects in the description line, then we can say, fine, there's 6 projects, there's 73,000 each, we can show them on the matrix, and we can, but to show 2 projects and show a multi-year plan out doesn't meet criteria, we just have to have you tweak the submission line so that they match up with the projects. So if you're gonna have 2 projects here, you need to have 2,
Yep,
unless you're gonna divide one project by 2 years, then you need to explain that to us and we can put it in
Yep.
like that. But I don't think it's gonna cost 73,000 times 1, 2, 3, 4, times 6 to do 2 ponds.
oh, no,
Right.
no, each year be
So
different
we
ponds.
just need to, I'd make a little better identification, Carl,
okay.
and then we can work with you.
Okay.
Alan?
gotcha.
And just a question, it's theory, it's come up at the planning board numerous times, as to how the drainage ponds get maintained and the cost of. Why is, say for instance, I don't know the one on Tyler, why am I, a taxpayer, gonna have to be saddled with the maintenance of that services only? Isn't there some methodology where we can,
No, because the town accepted it as part of the drainage part of the subdivision. It becomes the public works purview to maintain it.
well, it goes right, to me, it goes right back to, the impact of roads, and you collect funds for Wallace Road, you collect funds for Pleasant Street from
Not
developers. Excuse me?
Not near enough, though.
Once you accept it as part of the road drainage system, and the town assumes responsibility for it, it becomes the town's responsibility. End of story.
Well, I'm not saying this isn't the town's responsibility to maintain it. Okay, I'm not saying that. I'm saying who should be paying for it? And is there a participation that should be adjusted at the time of subdivision approval?
Well, then that's something we can discuss at a later date, but not at CIP.
I
Well,
know, but
and-
I'm saying it right now.
Well, and what I'd suggest is, the selectmen actually had a very, very good debate about that policy issue on the Blackbriar subdivision. So that if you wanna get a sense of what the issues were when they weighed that, because, there were some of the selectmen that very much felt that the homeowners association up there ought to maintain all the drainage infrastructure. And then there were other selectmen that felt, we wanna make sure it's maintained to an appropriate level because it affects the off-site properties. And that went on for several weeks where that.
And that goes
they
to the
debated.
document set up in the planning board approval, whether you have a homeowners association or not. So there's a lot of elements.
Well, that was the argument that was made when that was approved.
Yeah, but if there is no homeowners association,
You can't say.
then you can't tack it to a homeowners association that doesn't exist. Hence, it becomes a public obligation.
I'm not saying it's not a public obligation, I'm just,
Well, then it
we should be
needs,
looking at what we're doing.
it needs to be
in the future.
addressed before the final subdivision is approved then.
Is there a different way of showing it on the matrix than, you know, you list 2 of them for 73,000, is it, Does it even have to be a matrix thing? Can it be a maintenance like the sidewalk thing?
Well, he doesn't,
Or-
the difference is a maintenance item comes out of his operating budget, whereas a capital improvement project is a separate warrant article and voted and added to the operating budget. That's the difference between the two.
Can you increase your operating budget?
Oh, sure, just let the voters approve it.
Oh, my God.
I mean, it really seems like it should be
In,
that.
in a theoretical discussion, yes, you could.
But our criteria, Brian, is if it's a project that has a 5-year lifespan and exceeds 25,000, it qualifies for a CIP, proposal. And that's the criteria under which these are being presented.
And I think rebuilding a detention pond
It's gonna have a
is
5-year
gonna have
lifespan.
at least a 5-year lifespan.
So I think the criteria is fine, and I just don't
I
wanna see them
understand
just running out into infinity with 2 projects showing.
I think
Is it an issue that they're too far past the maintenance thing, and so that's why you're rebuilding it, and then
No.
further after you rebuild it, you'll be continually maintaining it, so you hopefully won't have to rebuild it in another 20 years or whatever?
You know,
I mean,
part of the reconstruction consideration on these is gaining access. If we had the access, it'd be easier to maintain it. But when you can't, there's no road to get to it, there's no way to get the equipment in there to maintain it, you gotta build
Drive
your
over
way
somebody's
in.
lawn.
Yeah,
and then you gotta
So-
clean up their lawn afterwards.
yeah. So that, I know that's part of, as we're planning these, that's part of the design and cost is, let's get access in there, we can rebuild it, and then have access to maintain it.
And you'll see all the new plans, Brian, that DPW comments on, all have gravel access roads, all the rear drainage structures on all new subdivisions. They're on all the new plans, so. They've covered their base now, it's just,
For going forward, everything that's being approved is being maintained, but all the ones from prior.
Access to
hadn't
maintenance.
been
Yeah, access to
maintained-
maintenance.
Hadn't been maintained and didn't have access to get it and maintain it, so that's why you have to.
all right, we spent enough time on this. Next.
Next. All right, the Uncanonic Dam, I'm opening qualifications packages, I think, next week. So that 100,000 I show in 2014 is merely a placeholder. We have the money this year to do a study of what the real issues up there are. I just threw a placeholder in there. Sometime over the next couple of months, the engineer will conclude their study, and we'll have a much better feel for what and how quickly things need to be dealt with up there. The rail trail slope and culvert repairs, I believe, last year, you guys had approved this, but we came back and said, hey, let's do West Union first, so.
We had a bone to pick with you over this. You came in with a 1, and then at a selectmen's meeting, you said that the CIP got it wrong, and I didn't agree with that statement.
well, I
So we
apologize.
reflected your request last year, and then you flip-flopped them because the dam came up as a bigger priority,
Yeah,
so.
yeah,
I think didn't that come up at the planning board presentation? I remember sitting
yeah.
with Megan,
Yeah.
and she and I were talking about
Yeah,
swapping those
Swapping
2
them,
projects.
Yeah.
that's the only bone I got to pick. Other than that, we're good.
And I think at that point, Carl, they were talking about a sinkhole in the upper part of the rail trail near the lake.
Yeah, there's actually two issues there. These are both behind the county complex. If you see where the county's garden is, which is kind of right across from the nursing home.
Over by the piggery.
Yeah, I mean, we call it the piggery if you're familiar with that, but there's a little building. One area, there's a big slope failure, like what we had down by Moose Club Park, where just a big chunk, and this slope's even higher than one at Moose Club Park, so that slope's probably 110 feet high, and a big wedge of soil just gave way, so the rail trail has sunk down, 8-10 inches on the edge. So there's that issue, and then while we were investigating that, whenever we see that kind of a thing, I immediately start looking for where there's the water coming from, because that's what causes it. So we started looking for where the drainage is and where the water is, and further down the trail towards Manchester, there's a very large granite box culvert that goes under the rail trail, again, about 100 feet deep. And there was a big sinkhole in the top of it, There are now a sinkhole in both sides of it, downstream and upstream. And what's happened, it's old granite slabs, and over the years, all the water flowing through there undermined under the granite slab, and one of the slabs just caved in. And so now, it defies logic. There's like 2 or 3 slabs that have caved in, and the slabs that were supported are still up there. We're not sure exactly how, but you look at it, and it's just the most frightening thing in the world to try to imagine how we're gonna go in there and rehab it. But it's a historic granite box, so we will be going in there to rehab it. We just haven't figured out exactly how just yet.
Nothing's in that rail trail. The interceptor's not in that rail trail, is it?
Not there, no.
Good.
No. Yeah, there's nothing there.
That's out in the road, I believe. All right.
Moving right along, we have,
Can I ask a
yes.
question that, do you have any idea, has that collapsed slope gotten any worse over the past year?
No, no, which doesn't surprise me. We saw the same thing on Moose Club. Once that shear face fails, you know, it's probably pretty stable where it is now. But if you go look at it, there's trees all caved in, and you gotta do something to make sure that it's not gonna move again, but it hasn't moved since the original slip.
Sort of the holes in the culvert, probably more of an issue than the slope.
Yeah, that is definitely, because if that, as we like to think of it, we would much rather go in there and fix it on our terms. If that thing fails and suddenly that stream, there's actually 2 streams that come together at that point. And if that thing completely failed and suddenly that water couldn't get
Take
through
the whole
there.
rail trail right out.
Yeah, I mean, water's gonna find its way sooner or later, and as that gets deeper and deeper, it becomes a bigger and bigger problem for us to try to deal with it, so. We wanna get it taken care of. That's the big one we're most nervous about is the culvert.
171.
171, Matt, this is a new project. Our friends at DOT that come around and inspect bridges, they happened down to Mass Road thinking it was one of the bridges they needed to look at, and it's actually just an arch culvert. This is a culvert down by Pizza Hut, I believe. And it's in very, very, very tough shape, and,
Pizza Hut?
yeah.
Yeah,
I know where you are, okay,
Shaw's-
yeah,
Shaw's
yeah,
Plaza.
Is that the one by the ice house,
yeah, across from the,
or tire warehouse
Yeah,
location?
yeah, so we actually got a call from the DOT bridge crew that had no business being there, but we're glad they were, because they figured out it wasn't their facility, but they called us down and said, you guys might want to take a look at this. And, it's the same thing we saw up on Mountain Road. It's an old metal arch. The bottom's rotted right out of it, so we gotta get in there and rehab it. Fortunately now we know how to do it. We just have to get the money and get in there and rehab it.
if that's the case, it's gonna wait till 2015.
Well, it doesn't get any worse.
Yeah. Whenever there's a bottom missing out of a big pipe like that, I get nervous.
That's what I'm asking. You want to set a priority for, you've got a 2 in here, okay, we'll just put a 2 on the matrix.
Okay, it's missing on it, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So that kind of finishes us up, I think, in Public Works. Solid Waste, we just have a couple of items. One is the replacement barrels. We actually pushed this out a year. When we went to automation back in 1995, we bought all those barrels. They had a 20-year, no, when did we, 95, 10-year warranty. They all came with a 10-year warranty, which was up in 2005. Most of the barrels are fine, but, we are replacing more and more and more of them. So we're just looking at it that it's inevitable that we're gonna start to see wholesale failure on those barrels and have to do some replacing. So I've kind of got it in there, call it a placeholder for now, but it's, sooner or later, we're gonna have to deal with it.
Now, would you expect to just wholesale replace all of them, or just buy a stockpile and replace them as needed?
We right now, that's how we handle it. We just budget so much a year to deal with as many as we can. What I'm looking at is, there are, about over 5,000 of them in inventory right now, and at $50 a pop, that's $250,000. So I was looking at it as over a period, we'll replace the majority of them. I don't think we have to do it all in 1 year.
Can we live by the if it's not broke, don't fix it motto?
That's why I say a placeholder, like we pushed it out this year, and as we go through the year, we'll kind of keep assessing, and when it gets to the point where it's a huge strain on the operating budget, then we'll start
You have
to,
the same issue with the blue barrels too.
eventually. Yeah, those are only a few years old, but.
Okay.
The next one, however, is a little more immediate. We have the truck scale down there, and every year that has to be certified and tested. When they came down last fall to do that certification, inside that scale, all of the pistons and supports are severely corroded, so it needs to be replaced. Basically, the scale itself needs to be replaced. What we're recommending is that we put, and this again was the scale manufacturer's recommendation, that we put a stainless steel scale body in there instead of just metal. You know, we're going across that thing with all our salt, all the trash, all the stuff dripping out of the trash, so it really kind of takes a beating. So the recommendation for the newer scale is put a stainless steel pistons and supports. And then we added to the matrix, though it's not actually in the next 6 years, but we now have the compactor that we bought for the recycling. And actually, you know what, that's not correct. I don't know why I think what we mean to put in here is, that's left over from the one we did buy, but what I meant to add in, and I didn't do it, I guess, is we need to start thinking about the compactor for the trash. When the transfer station was built in 1993, the trash compactor was installed, and if you haven't really thought about what that is, that thing's like 2 stories in the ground if you look at it right. It's very hard access, very hard to maintain it, just the way it was designed. And it's long outlived its design life. So sooner or later, we have to really get serious about budgeting to replace that compactor that's out there for the trash.
So we
side
need
of
to
things.
change the wording in the line then, Carl. It says recycle. It
Yeah,
should be,
that's what confused me.
it should be solid waste or trash, if you would.
Yeah.
And it's not a trailer and a compactor, it is the compactor that pushes the material into the trailer. So if you go out to the memo, it's not one additional trailer and compactor, it's actually a compactor.
Yeah. So I'll have to get you the
Work on
form,
that.
'cause
Yeah, I think that was an old line that just
Yeah.
was left there.
Yeah.
And
The
so
only
if
thing
you-
is because it would have to go into the vehicle line if it was gonna be a trailer, it wouldn't be in the,
Right.
So if you
solid.
give me the information and a new worksheet,
Yep.
I can add that stuff in.
I believe, you know, other than the bonds for the landfill that are just kind of ongoing, that's all we've got.
does anybody have any questions for Carl? Mark?
On the scale replacement, there's no priority indication, I believe, as blank.
It's on your
Yeah,
form.
That's my fault, it's a 2.
It's a
On the
two.
worksheet, it's a
Submission
2.
sheet.
Okay. 2, okay.
Now, that's a replacement in place, that's not a new one in a different location.
Right, I believe the pit, you know, the building's fine, the pit is fine, everything's fine, it's just the metal deck and the actual scale pistons.
I would like to see you put a couple extra thousand in on that one, because your scale house is the worst energy efficient building in the whole town, and it needs to be upgraded according to the energy.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
No.
What was the other worst one, Alan? There was 2.
Firehouse.
Probably Station
Station
17.
7, no.
Station 17.
Yep, that's the
Was
next
it the
one.
Well, I
firehouse?
better put a couple thousand.
Forget about that.
More than a
We'll just-
couple thousand on that one.
Station
were-
17
you were
is
at
the
the,
second worst.
Ad hoc committee meeting,
Yeah.
you know what's gonna happen there, so.
So maybe
Yeah.
if, when you do the new scale, we can add some insulation to that building, and we'll get it a better
It's
rating.
the heating system.
Is there drainage under that scale, Kyle, at all?
There must be.
I think there is. I think there is like an under drain, but you know, the problem, like I said, it's not that there's water laying in the pit.
Oh, it's the salt.
It's just
and
it
the
all,
drainage, yeah.
you know, all the brine just drips down over the metal deck and.
It's from the vehicles too, it's not just from the highway department trucks, it's from everybody's
Yeah.
salt-laden car that drives over it,
Yeah.
pickup. Any other questions for Public Works at this time? Mark?
I would just go on record as going back, we made what I'll call the Band-Aid repair to that dump truck last year, where we planned to get several years out of it. I mean, best laid plans, I mean, things don't always happen that way, and maybe we need to reevaluate when we do assess these trucks. We understand the system, the fleet is in pretty tough shape. I guess people have to know that the red flag has been waved, and we need to act on things accordingly so that Carl can have the safest truck for his guys to drive in. I would hate to see something happen because, you know, we didn't think safety first, and then money came first instead of safety, you know what I mean?
Well,
You will find that we always look at the community's interests, and we forward projects based on need and a criteria. We don't look at numbers at this committee. So
well, and just,
that-
yeah, just to be on record too, if that truck doesn't pass inspection, it's not gonna be on the road.
Oh, I
It's just
understand.
that simple.
We do
I
look at
understand,
numbers, I
but
stand
we
corrected.
had
We're
planned,
not budgeting.
we had planned for several more years, and this is just one prime example.
Well, I can say that this committee pushed that truck through last year and recommended it with 3
understand.
vehicles,
I
so
understand.
it's out of our hands at this point.
But, you know, the other thing we've seen, and too, we've always given the department heads some flexibility. I know we've seen it with police cruisers, and I think with a couple of trucks for Carl over the years, you're planning on replacing this particular truck, and then all of a sudden you have a major failure with another vehicle.
Yep.
We're not gonna say to the department head, too bad, that's not the one you wanted to replace.
No,
Brian, please?
I just have one more question.
Go ahead.
Carl. The road plan and the way it's been cut for the past few years, and, you know, last year was like 2 million short of what it should have been, right? And the year before was probably a million and a half.
Million and a half last
something
year
like
and a
that.
million the year before.
And I don't know what it was prior to that, but I know for the past several years it's been cut from what it should be in your plan.
Right.
Do you have a plan to recalibrate your model to refigure that money that's been cut back in so that, you know, you're not gonna be short changed somewhere along the, and
Give them a short answer.
Well, you just opened the barn door now, so I gotta go running in.
Well-
My first statement is, DPW's not shortchanged at all. The citizens of the town of Goffstown are the ones that are shortchanged. All we're doing is
the roads are
maintaining their
being
roads.
shortchanged.
But, you know, as far as the plan, it gets reallocated or redone every single year. You know, we rerun our priorities. Now, if we continue to experience massive cuts, we're gonna get to the point where I'll come in and say, look, if you wanna catch up, if you wanna get back on track, this is what it would take. But that's more of, I think, a budget discussion than it is a
So
CIP.
you're saying you reallocate what roads will be done each year, but you don't change the amount that's planned in the CIP
No,
over
we-
that, whatever, how far does that go out? Is it 10 years or something, or?
Well, it's another one of
It
those
was a
that goes on
20-year road
forever. It's
plan.
20, we ran a 20-year matrix when we first came out with it, so a lot of people call it the 20-year plan, but the reality is a forever plan. You know, and it comes down to, you know, those of you that have been around a while, you remember the term GASB 34, and that's what it really was for, is we as government need to show that we're maintaining the public assets at a certain level. And we came up with a policy to maintain the roads at a certain level, and the selectmen approved a plan that we're gonna maintain the roads, that, you know, slowly work our way up to a fairly good road network. And that's what the voters voted on and approved. We have done pretty well maintaining that despite budget cuts. But I would suspect that the data is gonna start to drop. When it starts to drop, we're no longer meeting the mandate of that town meeting vote. So when we can show that in the data, we'll come forward and say, okay, you know, this is what the voters said they wanted their level to be. This is where we're at. And then we'll talk about solutions. You know, do we wanna change what the voters said they wanted? Or do we wanna come up with a plan to get it
How
back
the
on
money's
track?
allocated.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, and the interns are out right now gathering that data. Usually in September-ish, we're in a point where we got all the data in and we can start running those reports, and then we get a sense of where the network is, and when we come in for budget season, we'll maybe be at the point we'll be ready to talk about that.
Very good. Any other questions?
Thank you all.
Thank you for coming in, Carl.
Thanks, Carl.
Okay, we have a next meeting. Thursday, June the 7th. We have the library and the school district. All right, anything else before the board tonight?
Just a quick question based upon the energy chapter thing. I don't see anything in here yet where anybody's proposing any capital projects that would improve energy efficiency in municipal buildings.
Well, if you look at the school district stuff.
You'll see that.
Alan,
I haven't seen it yet.
You will see it. We've been on a
Yeah.
7 years now, 6 years of that
Yeah,
Honeywell
something like
plan.
that, 5, 6, 7 years, something like that.
And the school will show you data that the money they've invested in their performance upgrades for the buildings has shown energy savings. They can show you the hard figures.
I'm looking not so much at the school department, but at the other municipalities, town
I think
hall,
it's too
fire
new,
station.
Alan. I think it's too new. This is just, energy chapter is new to us. These guys have been working on this stuff for years and years, and stuff's getting pushed out. It's hard enough to get a truck approved without $250,000 for insulation, so we can save $30,000 a year on our heating bill. Those, in my opinion, are pie in the sky ambitions in times when we can't afford to maintain the roads or do other things. So, you know, they're great ideas, but
Depends on your point of view.
Plus,
Yeah.
it didn't get adopted as part of the master plan anyway, so we can't formulate it into the CIP now anyway.
Yeah, you can blame it on
So-
me. Whatever.
Ivan.
I just have a question. Listening over the years to the discussions about the DPW and so forth, and just pick a project, sort of a project that was in the limelight is at a roundabout, and it was budgeted for 400,000, and well, it cost 800,000, you know, what did it cost? So, a question is, does the DPW have discrete project codes that are maintained? Does,
We're way out of our realm here. We don't have anything to do with that. You wanna talk that question, you need to take that one to the Board of Selectmen, I would say.
All we do is.
Plan.
no, I
We
understand.
look at what the department heads request, and we say, okay, is it something that the town needs? And how does that fit into the overall planning scheme? The fact that we have a budgeted, not, I shouldn't say, the fact that we have a CIP figure of $400,000, the actual costs comes out at $8,000,
800,000.
or whatever it is, or $8 million, is not something that this committee has any jurisdiction over, not something this committee has any control over.
And doesn't even wanna discuss. It's not
No,
our purview.
nor
That
does
needs to
anyone
be-
else.
That needs to be driven home every meeting, as far as I'm concerned. We are not a budget committee. We're a planning tool. And our job is to plan for the needs. We have, go back to your book and read what the purview of the committee is and our criteria, and that's what our criteria is.
And it's
And
not,
that's how we operate here.
and even as a planning tool, it's not our purview to second guess the presentation of
Nope.
the department head.
We take it at face value and we put
I'm
it into.
just saying why the town, ultimately the voters at the deliberative sessions, they have a chance to change things. I mean, Budget Committee makes recommendations only also, because that can be altered at the deliberative session.
Mhm.
I'm just sharing the opinion in town that voters who get to vote on this stuff want to know ultimately what it costs. And when they don't know that, they don't feel good. Is it 800,000 or 400,000? That makes a difference.
It's beyond this committee, sir.
Got it, I hear you.
There's an interesting paragraph. I'll read a
Got
sentence.
about 1 minute, because we
I-
close at 9 o'clock.
The sole purpose and effect of the capital improvements program shall be to aid the mayor or selectman and the budget committee in the consideration of the annual budget, period. So, we kind of spread things out and manipulate a few things.
I know that, I understand
And
that.
then it's up to others to determine whether it's appropriate expenditure of money.
Motion to adjourn, it's 9 o'clock.
Motion to adjourn by Earl, seconded by
I'll second it.
Alan Yaton. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Meeting over. Thank you.